faculty. This is Ben Larson, Charlie Grivis, George Leotode, and Garrett O'Neill. We'd like to start our presentation off with a few questions. How many of you in here use social media on a daily basis? So just about everybody. And how many of you would say you watch television on a daily basis? So that's about half. And how many of you would say your news source is 100% credible? And nobody. So that brings us to our topic as social media as a source of news. And as you can see depicted by this picture, traditional is now battling new media sources. So newspaper, television, and radio are now competing with websites and social media as a source of news. Why are we doing this? We're doing this because with COVID-19's effects on the world this past year, many of the older generation and new people are creating more social media accounts just so they can be more linked to their friends during this time of separation, which in result tends for them to spend more time on their device and these platforms in which they're getting news from and sometimes take as credible. So with our research, we would like to see if the amount of time spent on social media platforms creates a user bias towards the news source's credibility. And in our presentation, we're going to show you our hypothesis for our research, our survey plan, sample plan, descriptive interpretation, and our hypothesis results. With that being said, I'm going to pass it to Ben to talk about our hypothesis.
Sure. So for our first of 5 hypotheses, we wanted to see if a person spends more time on social media and if they view it as a credible source as opposed to others. And this is pretty much the overarching theme. This is user bias. So the more time you spend with one thing, specific to ours, it'd be social media or new technology, are you going to believe that and view it as more credible? Our second hypothesis, it seems kind of outlandish, but there's a lot of study that shows that females in general have a little bit stronger of user time for cell phone and then also different source. So we're applying it to see if this is also true with social media. Our third hypothesis is the younger the individual, the more time they're going to spend on social media. And if you look at adoption rates, the generation before us and the one before that, especially like if you're to look at baby boomers in the 1960s, their television use, especially a little bit of radio, but mostly television, it's what you integrate with when you're younger, is probably going to be the most prevalent source. So that's one thing we wanted to explore. For our fourth hypothesis, we wanted to see if business majors are more likely to view Fox News. And these two relate to some extent. I think out of all of the majors in general, business majors are viewed as definitely more conservative, and Fox News was the star of conservative news. So we wanted to see if those two were associated. And our fifth hypothesis is if an employed individual, as opposed to unemployed, is more likely to view their media medium of choice as more credible. And this might be with what the company or whatever they're working for, their employer, what their values align with, as opposed to somebody who doesn't work at all. With this, I'm going to be passing it to George to talk more about the survey.
Thanks, Ben. So starting off with the survey, so upon opening it, you're going to kind of be briefed with an introduction that's going to go over the purpose of our research project, as well as us as a team kind of giving it, Northern Michigan students within the College of Business program. Then it's going to kind of go over a consent portion. So if you click to proceed with the survey, you consent for the information to being used, but that it's okay if you want to back out and not proceed. If you do proceed, you're going to be kind of going on to the next page, where you're going to be asked how much time is spent on social media as well as other broadcast and print media. Then it's going to dive a little deeper into specific types, so Instagram, Snapchat, or Fox News, CNN, or different types of print media. Then it's going to be kind of brought to something like this. So whether you deem the sources you picked credible, reliable, and or credible, likable, and believable. The next page is going to be brought up with a little bit of some demographic questions, kind of easing the participants in with questions like your age or your gender, and then diving a little deeper into your education status, where you attend, and then your major or concentrate, and then further into employment status and even how much you make. So then the survey plan itself, we were very fortunate to use Qualtrics, which was pretty much sponsored by Northern Michigan University, to form our survey and to kind of use that platform to send out and receive our data. So it was sent to specifically university students, but pretty much as many participants as we could obtain. And it was sent through email and social media platforms, specifically Facebook, but also through text message and actual kind of giving individuals the phone or computer to fill out the survey. So it was sent from our group specifically, but also encouraged for the survey to be shared from other students or even family members to once again get as many participants as possible. We allotted a kind of a 2-week waiting period, but as the test went on, we obviously kind of obtained more participants, so sometimes we had to change our data or keep it accordingly. And we were able to use IMB SPSS statistics to look at the specific data and analyze it, comparing different types of variables throughout the survey. So I'm going to pass it to Charlie to talk about the sample plan.
All right, so for the sample plan, we were looking for a minimum of 100 participants and a maximum of 250, and we fell right in the middle of that, right around 150 participants, which was good. We were looking for mainly a sample of just Northern Michigan University students to kind of relate it to all of us. All the questions and answers were analyzed to find all different trends and differences. And we went into some demographic questions such as age, gender, race, what school you attend, and your major. So again, for the descriptive interpretation, we thought all of these demographic sections were very important relating to our hypothesis. They all played very important roles. And then on these next slides, you're going to see some pie chart distributions. So for the age category, as you can see, majority of 65% of 18 to 24-year-olds, so mainly our age group and university students make this up. And then for the gender, we see pretty much close to a 50-50 split, with males just over 46% and females just over 52%. So this gives us the ability to compare the two to look for different trends and differences. And then for the race category, as you see, just over 95% of our participants chose white. And we would have liked to see a little bit more variety in the race category, just to look at the similarities and differences between races and their media use. And then for the attending school section, we found that 29% of our participants actually attended NMU, which was good. That gave us around 30% or 30 students to look at that actually were at NMU. And then the other and non-applicable, so other just over 24% were students who are attending school but are at different universities. And then the non-applicable being just over 46% were participants who have already graduated through school or are in the workforce. And then for a major, we were looking for mainly business majors because that's kind of what our class is oriented around. We found 20% of our participants that attended Northern were business majors. We would have liked to see a little bit more to get more data points in that realm. And now I'll give it over to Garrett to talk about all of our hypotheses.
Thank you, Charlie. So as Charlie said, I'm going to break down each hypothesis with the statistics and the numbers. So going forward, hypothesis 1 was, as the more time you spend on social media, the more credible you're going to find it to be. So kind of looking at this chart from top to bottom, starting at 1 all the way down to 7, The participants that selected like an hour to 2 hours, they didn't find it nearly as credible compared to the individuals that selected either 5 or 6 hours. So right there, it says that there is statistically significant difference between a person who does spend more time on social media. They find it out to be more credible, to state our hypothesis number 1 correct. So going number 2 was the female spending more time on social media. So of the 145, 146 participants to be exact that completed the survey, only 142 of them answered female or male. So the others either, they picked something else or just didn't feel comfortable. With that being said, 77 of them answered female, 65 answered male. And then looking at the median standard deviation, you can find there is a significant difference between the two, saying that females do spend more time on social media, as Ben told in our hypothesis early in the presentation, making our hypothesis correct as well. So moving along to the third one was we thought that the younger generation did spend more time on social media alone, nothing to do with television or magazine. So again, kind of just moving from top to bottom, the age range was 18 to 24 years old. So that's what we thought as well to be correct. And as an outside resource told us, with like the younger generation's usage amount, it just kind of shows what's going on culturally, like in our world, with how easy it is to access a mobile device and then create a social platform. And then also in that article later on, it said that when they do create these social platforms, they're keeping in touch with family and friends. As Tommy said, with COVID-19, kind of hard to talk to those, face to face around the world. They're following the news. You can watch Fox News or whatever, CNN, whatever news platform that you're following, or just keeping up with events, keeping up to date what's going on around you locally in your community. So the fourth one was the business students watching Fox News. So as Charlie stated in our descriptive interpretation, 20% of the participants classified themselves as business majors. So of the 20%, only a third of them, which came up to 12 people, said they actually watch Fox News, which was interesting to our group. Now kind of looking at the other side of this chart, 29 people of the participants that said they weren't business said they watched Fox News more than business students. So this said our hypothesis was incorrect. And then we just kind of made a side note that Fox News isn't really a businessman news source anymore. It's just meant for all demographics or where you outline. So finally was our fifth one with the employment status, saying that if you're employed, you're going to find your news source more credible. Like Ben said, within the workplace, you're kind of just going to follow along. So looking at the numbers here, 1 and 2, this question wasn't phrased and constructed correctly that we wanted it. So 1 and 2 is supposed to be together. That's going to be full-time and then part-time. And then below 2 and further around, so 3 through 7 is going to be your non-employed, looking for work, prefer not to answer, and etc. So we kind of just took it probably wasn't correct, but we took the mean of the two, and it came out to 2.26 for the 1 and 2, and then it came out to 2.034 for the 3 through 7. So that's when we thought that the employed participants did find their news source more credible than the others. So I'm going to pass it on to Ben, who's going to wrap things up for us.
Thanks. So in conclusion, we have our overarching question. And this is, which media source do students use the most frequently? And then also, what do they deem as the most reliable source of information? And then from that, we have our group. So we have a minimum of 100 students and a maximum of 250. We fell right around 150. But these are specifically NMU students too, which in our results were actually the least out of all of our sampling. We then have our survey. So we have time exposed, specifically sourced information gathered just to find out if students actually are concerned about reliability. We had expected results, so we really expected students to use new forms of media and new technology over the older ones. I think we were surprised too with our results, especially the amount that we had incorrect versus correct. And this leads into the most important part of this research too, which is future research. Our demographic that we're studying is so young, our behaviors are bound to change with the future. And if you can understand some of the behaviors now, it's gonna help businesses like Fox News and social medias to better accommodate us and then also to adapt with us. So that is our presentation, and we're open for questions now.